down this viaduct. So please make sure you guys come out and see the artwork and tell your friends. Please tweet and Facebook all day long so we can get as many people out here as possible. And our show, the Hoodoise is in the house. Hello. Woohoo! Our show here is a water summit. It's Red Alert Wet Summer in Chicago, and that's the name of our show today. And it's going to be getting started very shortly. So I'm going to ask folks to come on down and fill up the front rows, too. You get extra points if you fill up the front rows. And our show will be started as soon as possible. Marco, you can bring it back down.
The velocity of time turns her voice into sugar water.
Before they start. I don't know, can you hear me or not? Once the live go through, I'll walk through and let you guys see the viaduct that they don't start it on. Beautiful work.
La imagine I saw things. I imagine I saw things. I imagine things. I imagine things. I imagine things. I imagine.
Give it up for DJ Nahual! And now, ladies and gentlemen, gender non-conforming and trans deities, welcome to a special edition of the Hoodoise! We are Chicago's bi-weekly traveling underground live and live stream news show and web series that gives Black optic and radical perspectives on culture and politics. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa. And bienvenidos to our Red Alert Wet Summer Summit. Let's give it up to our host, 93 Studios.
Yeah!
I think this is the first time we're doing a Hoodoise during the day, and I know because I'm sober. For now. Who here is familiar or has been to the Hoodoise show before? Let me hear you. You all are awesome. Who here is not familiar or has not been to a show before? You all hate gay people. Just kidding. We're so glad that you're here and you came out on a Saturday morning instead of curing your hangover eating menudo because you didn't know how to go home last night. For those that don't know, the Hoodoise was founded in January 2017 after Trump's inauguration, and since then, we have pumped out over 20 shows a year. It's a lot. But after our January show this year, following the mayoral elections, we had to go underground. And we've been underground for the last 8 months. And for those that don't know, underground is a radical way of saying, we ran out of money. But we're back. Today, we are back. And I am back. I am back from LA, where I've been living for the past 5 months, working as a well-paid TV writer for the show The Chi on Showtime.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what that experience has taught me. Making money is a lot funner than being an activist, where you work long hours for free and then get arrested, or death threats. I mean, it's really crazy. For like the first time in my life, I haven't had to cry like once a month when the bills come and I have to decide, am I going to have electricity or 7 gin and tonics on Friday? You know, and when the shampoo runs out, I don't have to do what my mom used to do growing up, when like you fill it up with water and shake it up and use that weird sudsy mixture for a week. Now when ComEd calls, I get to say, oh, lady, you want my effing money? Well, guess what? I'm gonna effing give it to you. So don't shut off my electricity again. And then she says, sir, please do not talk to me like that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I know it's not your fault. You know, but even though I'm living this luxurious lifestyle, don't get it twisted. I'm still just Ricky from the block.
Yeah.
So when Olga Bautista, the Southside's very own, and rep from the Great Lakes, let's give it up for Olga. When Olga asked me to come back to the show, to come back and put up the show, of course I said yes. You want to know why? Who here has any guesses why? No. That's a good guess though. But yes, because I love Olga. Power of the people, that's right. Because you know why? I keep it real. And I don't forget where I come from. Did that sound real? Let me try it again. I keep it real. And I don't forget where I come from. Someone said you're supposed to say that once you move out to Hollywood, so I'm just practicing a lot. But honestly, me siento muy excited to be here for the Red Alert Red Alert Wet Summer Summit. In our everyday utopia, water is quickly becoming the element that our marginalization, resistance, and radical futures revolve around. And the battle of our future is taking place on the high seas. And I, for one, am excited about that because I think sailors are hot. Right? With those little hats that they wear on those cute little heads when they attack foreign countries. I mean, the violence and imperialism is bad, but the hats and the hot. But a closer battleground is the Great Lakes, the second largest source of fresh water in the world. That's right. The lake you peed in as a kid when your mom or grandmother didn't want to take you to the beach house bathroom is the key to our survival. And we got so many guests here to give us the radical real on water, pollution, flooding. Just go fly with the wind. We're not talking about litter today, so it's okay if I let the papers leave.
Okay, right.
They want to be free. It's a revolution for objects. But before we get to all of them, we're going to get the lay of the land with a little help from past cast member and a member of our Hoodoise family. She is the founder and director of the Freshwater Lab, a humanities-based initiative focused on research, teaching, and public awareness about the Great Lakes, and a professor at UIC where she studies how water and oil are intertwined in our lives, histories, and mythologies. Everyone, please welcome Professor Rachel Haverlock. You know what?
Free objects.
This is the most. This is the most. Hold on. I'm gonna get see if I can get set up in this video. So, Rachel, how have you been?
I've been okay. I've been okay.
Okay, so you're going to give us information today
Information.
for free. No one has to take out a student loan and go see you at UIC today. So I thought that this time we could do it a little differently, and instead of just, you know, having Rachel come up here and dazzling us with her intelligence, we'll do it a little bit more participatory. And so what's going to happen is we're going to play a little game called Moist Truths. And this game is like Jeopardy, but moister. Because, you know, water is the theme of the show. And I'm going to pretend to be like, just pretend that I'm like Alex Trebek, but like a moist Alex Trebek. And my voice will be very moisty too. And I'm going to ask very, very moist multiple choice questions. And you all have to like moistly cheer for which answer you think is right. Or, you know, the moistest. And then Rachel will school us on what the actual moist truth is. Are you all ready?
Ready?
All right. Question 1. Bottled water is one of the fastest growing industries in the world. Compared to your tap water, how strictly is bottled water regulated? A, more than tap water? B, the same as tap water? Or C, less than tap water? Rachel?
You all got it right.
That was an easy one! Get over yourselves.
But it's worth saying that now this is not to take away from the issues that we have in the form of lead pipes, and we can talk about that as well. But people tend to think that bottled water is tested, right? Safer. That's how they got us to pay double for what we already get. But in fact, bottled water is only regulated like a commodity, not like water. So what that means is that when there are pallets of bottled water in a warehouse, somebody, I think there might still be 1 or 2 inspectors left in the federal government, somebody may walk through the room, and that's how bottled water gets tested before it crosses straight lines. Now you might say, if it's never tested, why have they never been sued? Well, think about this. If everybody in a town drinks water and they get sick, sooner down the way, you can trace that back to your tap water. But when bottled water goes across the globe in all these different places, there's no way to correlate it. So there's nothing driving the corporations. Can we name them before number 2? Yeah. What are the 3 corporations that bring you bottled water? Nestle, PepsiCo, and Coca-Cola. So any bottled water that is out there in the world traces back to one of the 3. And because they steal so much of the world's water and then sell stolen water back to people at marked up prices, no one can correlate that. So it could be making you sick in all kinds of ways because of the water or because of the plastic leaching. But because it's not traceable, they're not answerable really to anybody.
Wow, you're a Debbie Downer. Question 2. How much tax money does Nestle pay per year to extract and sell water from the public resource that is our Lake Michigan? A, $0 in taxes. B, $20 million or 5 cents per gallon. Or C, $864 or about how much Flint residents paid for their water in 2015. Yeah, you got a different answer? A? 0. 0 is correct. Break it down for us, Rachel.
0 is correct. This is, you guys know everything already, so we could just start drinking beer and from this point on. And then I wouldn't be such a downer because it's locally made. The real culprit when you live as close to Lake Michigan as we do is Ice Mountain. Anyone ever been to Michigan? Any Michigan here? Anyone ever seen? I'm a Michigan.
Oh, Detroit's in Michigan. I've been there.
Yeah, yes it is. Hometown, so watch out.
Traveling.
Watch out. Anyone ever seen a mountain in Michigan?
No.
I mean, there's more than here. There's definitely an incline, but there's not an ice mountain in Michigan. In fact, the water is stolen from beneath the feet of the rural town of Osceola County, Michigan, and also some of the sacred waters of the Odawa Nations. So Ice Mountain not only pays $0 in taxes, they're actually subsidized by the taxpayers of Michigan, who paid for their bottling plant, who paid for their school, which is, I could go on because I'm the daughter of a Detroit public school teacher, that Nestle school was paid for by Michigan taxpayers, but they're literally subsidized. And check it out, because Osceola is a little rural town. I mean, I think that's that kind of like red country we hear about, but they have put every cent that they have and every cent that they don't have in a massive court case with the Nestle Corporation to get their water back. We'll also note that the Nestle Corporation, well, let me ask it because you guys are so smart. What water crisis do you think led to windfall profits for Nestle's Ice Mountain brand?
When?
The Flint water crisis, when everyone doing what they could for Flint was donating water, brought windfall profits to Nestle's Ice Mountain brand. So everyone doing good, trying to do good, buying water for Flint, ended up inflating their profit margin. And
These effers are evil.
they are
They
bad.
like took all the land, stole that, and they're like, you know what? We need all the water too.
So, I mean, boycott Nestle and, like, be smart because they sneak and they hide. Is Perrier, is San Pellegrino.
Oh, but those are good.
No, they are
The
bad.
orange one, the blood orange one, aranciata. It's all in Italian. I feel like
Yeah,
I feel like
nah.
I'm somewhere fancy whenever I drink it.
No, we could do it right here, right now. We can have our own flavored water company that would pay taxes and employ local.
If it was a Chicago flavored water company, Hot Cheeto would be a flavor.
Hot Cheeto would be a flavor. It's going to have your picture on the can.
It better.
Your smiling
This
LA
dimple
face.
chin can sell anything. Let's get on to our third question. I want to hear my voice again. All right, so in 2018, the U.S. steel plant in Portage, Indiana spilled 56 pounds of chromium into Lake Michigan in one day. Which group mobilized to hold the company accountable? Was it A, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, B, Captain Planet and the Planeteers, or C, the Sierra Club?
No, wait, you forgot one.
Oh, or D, the Lake Michigan Surfers? Who was it?
You don't let them answer.
What do we hear? D.
Well, you've gotten every single one right, which means that when we have hot Cheeto flavored water, everyone will get a free can of it. In fact, when U.S. Steel spilled hexavalent chromium into Lake Michigan and first didn't report it and then underreported it, it's right near the best break in the lake where people surf. And so the Surf Rider Foundation, the surfing community, not known for their political activism, you know, hang loose, not known for their political activism, became exposed directly and developed all kinds of immediate sicknesses and long-term things. And the surfers spearheaded the lawsuit of U.S. Steel. But before we hear Ricky's voice again, ringing in our ears...
Well, actually, go ahead.
Okay. There's one more piece here, and Olga's here, and a lot of people here today can speak to this more than I can. But when BP Whiting spilled tar sands directly in Lake Michigan, there was no study done of what spilled. We spent a summer trying to get them to report like what spilled in the lake. They informed us that they'd be doing an internal investigation. When U.S. Steel spills hexavalent chromium, it's picked up right by noble journalists trying to do their job, but the public does not hear about this. If you don't hear about it, you can't react, you can't stay out of the water, you can't take action. ArcelorMittal, the steel company that bills itself as the most environmental, just had a spill less than 2 months ago, goes underreported. So that's the thing. And just to kind of tie it all up in one neat bow, and one more question, guess whose brother played a key role in deregulating all of the factories along the Indiana coastline of Lake Michigan? Not Rahm's brother. Not Daly's brother. Well, not Snyder's brother.
Eddie Murphy.
Think Indiana. Mike Pence's brother.
Oh, wow.
The Pence family are Kyle Oil. The Pence family is oil. They had a plan for themselves and their cohorts to pay less taxes, to break the labor movement, to undo environmental regulation. It started with Pence's brother being head of the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, played that key role. And when we have these recurrent spills, we should just call it operations on the Indiana coastline. It happens so much. So that is to say, just to end this part of our segment, we should take over that coastline from the state of Indiana.
I mean, no, that is to say that Mike Pence is the worst gay vice president we've ever had. And Rachel, you don't decide when to end the segments, I do. All right? So, and I actually think that, you know, you've been up here being a little smarty pants, teaching the people, testing them on their knowledge. I think we should test you on your knowledge. And give you a grade like you do at UIC to the people. So, Miss Rachel Haverlock, that I know everything about water.
Doctor.
Dr. Haverlock. Check me. That she's not just an expert, she's a checkspert. She will check a booty. It's so hard to do one of these shows without swearing, I swear to God. All right. But I think what we're going to do is we are going to put 3 minutes on the... Who's got to stop a timer on their phone or something? Oh, we got it? We're going to put 3 minutes on the clock, and we're going to see if Rachel can deliver 20 or more facts about water. All right? So that we get like a free class. It's also ways of like pirating knowledge, you know, that's all we're doing here. So let's give it up. Let's get the timer on. And go.
The biggest corporations that privatize water services are Suez, Veolia, and Bechtel. Bechtel is a company in with Dick Cheney that often makes oil pipelines. If you live in the state of Illinois and your water is privatized, it is done so by the Illinois American Water Corporation. Their path was made easier when Bruce Rauner was governor. Chicago's water is still municipal in the Department of Water Management. The head of it is Randy Connor. The water is tested
That sounds like an evil name. Sorry.
daily at the intake, but Chicago has more lead pipes than any other city in the U.S. because the lead corporations that were represented by a downtown law firm called Kirkland and Ellis, where Lisa Madigan just took a job. Kirkland and Ellis provided cover for the lead industry to install lead pipes in Chicago until about 1987. We have hundreds and hundreds of miles of lead pipes with no current plan in place to get them out of the ground. You should filter your water using a filter that is certified NSF ANSI with 2 numbers after it, 42 or 31, I believe. You should also...
That one doesn't count.
You should also filter your water for hexavalent chromium, which reaches our lake from the likes of U.S. Steel. But still, we've got 1/5 of the world's fresh water. You can't really get anything better anywhere else. If we filtered it on our own and had our own municipal water brand, we would have the money to exchange our lead pipes. There are some carp on their way into the Great Lakes. They've been given the name Asian and construed as a demographic threat.
That's racist.
The current plan, I'm not joking, is to build a wall in the water to keep them out. Instead, we should think about shutting down the canal along which these fish are traveling. The Army Corps of Engineers has proposed an $800 million plan.
We are at time, Rachel. Let's give Rachel a round of applause. How many facts was that? She made 24 facts, but if you take off 5, she didn't win. But we are affirmative, so 30. Oh, okay, so let's give, you did great. I'm just messing around. Rachel Haverlock is a genius. She is one of the reasons that I came to this work around freshwater. I'm so grateful.
And you should see him eat smelt.
Yeah, it's delicious. Let's give Rachel a round of applause. Thank you so much. All right. You didn't have to take out student loans, and you learned all of that.
That's true. That was
Right?
good.
Now that we got the facts straight, let's keep swimming with our first set of guests. A brilliant group of experts, I mean, checkperts. Let's welcome them so they can make it rain knowledge about water issues and inequality in Chicago. First up, she got her start in environmental justice when she made the connection between the steel mills and her brother's asthma. She is currently a program director for the Center for Neighborhood Technology, focusing on climate resiliency and inclusive city planning. Please give it up for Marcela Bondikinen. They are a policy and data professional who works to provide resources, research, and tools to community and civic organizations to facilitate progressive change. They currently serve as the Economic Development Planner at the Vorey Center for Neighborhood and Community Improvement at UIC. Give it up for Jessica Kursman. And lastly, she is a reporter for the Chicago Tribune who uses data to uncover systemic abuses and bolster investigations about racial disparities in the pricing and waste of drinking water around Chicago. This is her second time on our show. Please welcome... I'll wait. I'll do it over. Cecilia, you deserve better. Marcos, that was wrong. And lastly, she is a reporter for the Chicago Tribune who uses data to uncover systemic abuses and bolster investigations about racial disparities in the pricing and waste of drinking water around Chicago. This is her second time on our show. Please welcome Cecilia Reyes. This is good. And you all, let's give it up for Rico at the Ink Factory right over here. He's doing some drawings, but if you look at the drawings more than me, I'll make him stop. So let's stop giving it up for him. Look at over here. All right, Cecilia, let's start with you. We had you on our Agua Fresca show a year ago to talk about your investigation, the water drain, which breaks down how much Chicagoans are paying for the water they drink. For people who weren't there, can you recap what you discovered in that investigation?
Yeah, so this was in 2017, follow-up to come. We found basically that communities of color, especially majority black communities around Chicago and the northeastern Illinois area that got its water from Lake Michigan were paying some of the highest prices for that same amount of water as other communities, other white communities, for example, and they were also losing the most amounts of that water and still having to pay for it due to various reasons, but mostly older infrastructure and in some cases lack of political will. So the investigation was looking at the two things. It was looking at pricing, affordability, and water conservation. That's a quick thing.
All right. We're going to get back to that. Marcela, you work for the Center for Neighborhood Technology. I don't know what that means, because to me that means a Metro PCS or Cricket, girl. Do you work for Metro PCS or Cricket? You don't gotta lie and try and be bougie. Okay. So, help me figure something else out. People want to complain when water is too expensive, but then they want to cry about it when they get water for free $3.99 when it floods their basement. So, doesn't that make them hippos? Shorts for hypocrites.
All right. So, I'm sorry for you.
No, I was not, actually. Okay, for real. You've been studying flooding, right?
Yeah.
As part of the Rain Ready program at, Radio Shack, Center for Neighborhood Technology. Can you break down for us who is getting flooded and why?
All right, yeah. So, the government uses these floodplain maps put out by FEMA, and they show flooding happening in areas around rivers and coasts, but that's not actually what's happening in Chicago. I feel like I'm super close. What's happening in Chicago is our sewer system is not up to the task.
There you got it.
If you come closer, we can bring it like that. So you come up.
Okay. All right. Is this better?
Yeah, you gotta be like...
I gotta be... Okay. All right. The problem with Chicago is our sewer system. It's really old, and in some places it's not well maintained. So instead of looking at the FEMA floodplain maps, what we did at CNT was look at insurance claim data for homes to see where people are reporting flood damage. So throughout all of Cook County, everybody's flooding, every zip code. Mostly outside of the floodplain. It has nothing to do with the floodplain. It is mostly low-income people that are being really hard hit. But if you look at the city of Chicago, because it's so segregated, you can actually see that it's mostly people of color that are flooding. There are about 13 zip codes that represent 3/4 of all the flooding that happens in Chicago. Those are 87% people of color. But if you think that that's maybe just unlucky or coincidence, you can also look at the zip codes that are flooding the least. So there's 13 zip codes. If you put them all together, that's like less than 1% of all the flooding. Those are only 30% people of color. So if you look at what the actual insurance claim data is saying about where people are reporting it, it has nothing to do with being by the river, but has everything to do about what zip code you're in.
Wow. I mean, so like in both of these instances, both Cecilia, because your story came out in 2017. And then, you know, and the same thing with this, like, has anyone been, what are some of the things that people have been doing to address these problems?
Hello? Oh, yeah. Okay, the hard thing about our investigation is that the way that these prices are set are very local. So we're talking cities and towns, not necessarily down to the zip code level. So the way that these rate hikes would be passed would be kind of through the normal aldermanic process. So you just needed a majority for people to say, okay, yeah, raise the rates. And so when thinking about what changes you could do, because water is not regulated like other utilities in Illinois, like electricity or gas, for example, there wasn't any one oversight body, organization that was looking at this and saying, hey, like, this is not right. There were a couple of ideas thrown around by the Cook County Board. Maybe you can use community block grants to kind of have a pool of money for communities that need to replace their infrastructure. But even when you look at state-funded funds of that same sort, it wasn't those communities that were applying for those loans anyway, because there was a big entry kind of, I guess, I don't know, it was just hard to apply for those things because you needed to put forth an engineering plan, you needed to do all sorts of things. So there wasn't, so the short answer is that there hasn't really been anything done to alleviate these pricing disparities. In Chicago, there was an ordinance that was introduced, the Water for All ordinance, as far as I know, that kind of died in committee. I don't know if it's being brought back, but since these are very local changes, yeah, there wasn't any one area that kind of wanted to put something forth.
And then Marcela, you know, you were talking about the flooding. What are some of the solutions that Rain Ready is working on, and you know that you guys are doing over there?
Yeah, so as part of our research, we talked to people who were flooding, and they were telling us that there's the monetary impact. So on average, people get about $4,000 worth of damage for every flood event, but they're flooding multiple times. It was also more than just about the money. It was about things like it felt shameful to them. They weren't talking to people about it. They thought that they were the only ones flooding. It was really frustrating. It was really disempowering. It was stressful. Also, there are health issues from the mold and the building dampness. So what we did was start to get people together. We had these things called gross gatherings, community meetings, where we had residents come and tell their stories, give testimonials. We had government there to talk about it too. So that's one part of it, is the organizing. We have steering committees in some neighborhoods that want to work with us. We also do community sort of planning services. Again, it's more grassroots, but it's about gathering resident data and getting them together with the local government to talk about what's going on and making them co-design solutions together instead of either a top-down approach or an approach that is just completely behind closed doors. Rain Ready Home is a program that offers building risk assessments to tell you if you're at risk of flooding, how you're at risk, and give you some solutions around that. That's usually funded by a local government. Like we're working at Oak Park right now, that gives grants to people to help them make changes to their house. We are starting work in Chicago after a long time of trying to get this program going, but just in the Chatham neighborhood, so we're hoping to expand that across the city eventually. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now at TNT.
Wow. Jessica, your turn. I'm just thinking right now, and I'm like thinking, I have a theory that I will say is mine. These are my words. I don't want to, you guys are all respectable people that work with nonprofits. So, I'm assuming responsibility for this. I'm just a gay political radical that says things that get me in trouble. So my theory, I will say it by expressing it, by paraphrasing the words of my favorite gay rapper, Kanye West. And that theory is that Chicago hates black and brown people. And I'm saying that because, you're just hearing about how our communities are flooding, or they're shutting off our water. They're shutting down schools and mental health clinics in our communities. They, do bad things. And I don't think it's coincidental. I think it is coordinated, right? Even right now, we are currently sitting a few steps away from the Lake Calumet Planned Manufacturing District, which means as we speak, we're all probably breathing in toxic chemicals. Yeah. Welcome to the Hoodoise. We planned it like that because I didn't like some of you. But enough about me, Jessica. You're a researcher and economic development planner, and you've worked with groups in this neighborhood to help them understand the way city planning keeps pushing heavy industry in our communities. So can you explain what the hell is a planned manufacturing district? Because I don't even know. I just said it because Ellen, my producer, wrote it in the script. And how did this planned manufacturing district get here on the southeast side?
Yeah, so the PMD, or Planned Manufacturing District, is purposely obtuse. Like, I don't know anyone who's not a planner who's never heard of that. So a planned manufacturing district is basically carte blanche to do anything the city wants to do with a certain amount of area. So, like, for instance, for that restaurant over there, they had to get special zoning for it to be commercial, so they could, put up a restaurant. And it's parcel by parcel throughout the city. That's how zoning works. But there's this thing called a PMD, where basically the city can just take that whole area and do whatever they want with it, with no other specific zoning intentions behind it, and it's specifically for manufacturing. So the reason why I'm bringing up a planned manufacturing district at this water event is because it has a lot of influence on the water itself. And Olga at Coalition to Ban Pet Coke and Southeast Environmental Task Force asked the research center I work at, and so did Peggy Salazar at SETF, to look at the zoning around here, originally because General Iron, which is a major metal scrapper on the north side, got pushed out by the second ward by Alderman Brian Hopkins, and they're looking to move down here. So just adding another polluter to the area, and I can speak a little bit more about how the PMDs got down here if I don't put you all to sleep. So. All right, so there's 15 in Chicago. 10 are actually on the north and northwest sides, the majority on the north and northwest sides. The biggest one is actually here in the Calumet. And it's also the only one that allows for hazardous waste dumping. Yeah. And so I'm going to read the definition, too, of what the legalese of what the city calls for hazardous waste. So hazardous waste means a waste or a combination of wastes which, because of its quantity, concentration, or physical or chemical or infectious characteristics, may cause or significantly contribute to an increase in mortality or an increase in serious, irreversible, or incapacitating reversible illnesses, or pose a substantial present or potential hazard to human health or the environment when improperly treated, stored, blah, blah, blah. So the only area in the city where it's actually legal to cause mortality from hazardous waste or serious grave illnesses is here in the Calumet. And the PMD on the north side that we were looking at, where the scrapper is leaving, actually got dissolved to bring way for Lincoln Yards, which got a $2 million subsidy from the city of Chicago, as Rahm Emanuel's swan song, to be dissolved to be turned into commercial and residential.
Wow.
So that was a PMD.
So like, what have been some of the community responses to planning manufactured districts, right? Like, and then, they have them a place like here. You said like there were some on the north and northwest side, which tend to like, when I think of the north and northwest side, I think of like Lincoln Park, right? And these are predominantly white communities. Does it look the same way over there, or is what I mean? Like, is the community response the same, or yeah?
They're smaller. They're not dumping hazardous waste, and they're also under consideration for different uses. So the first one to be dissolved, right, is the Goose Island one.
which is the one that is now being turned into luxury condos and a stadium, or the stadium's been scrapped, but just a lot of nice shiny things. But some statistics I can give, or just some facts about the difference between the General Iron sighting and the up north and the sighting down here is that between both areas, the housing values are 40% lower, the median average down here where it's being sited, and it's 40% above in Lincoln Yards area. Typically what planned manufacturing districts do is they basically put a hold on all of their development. So you can't do anything else besides manufacturing. It actually makes the land value go down. And the reason why that's so important is because there are so many polluter companies down here. It gives them carte blanche to move in because basically the city has planned for them to move in down here.
It's like the opposite of a safe word.
Exactly.
Right? Like, so, I mean, here's what I'm thinking, right? The Hoodoise is like all about like making information accessible, right? Like, we know that is important, especially for our audience when it comes to Chicago government, because they like to make it very inaccessible. Right? And when a developer comes to a neighborhood and wants to know how to navigate zoning rules and water infrastructure, the city like rolls out the red carpet and gives them a freaking like concierge to navigate these systems. But when everyday community members and activists want that information, it's like we're constantly bucking up against a brick wall. So like I want to ask each of you to like, and for me, like I think that knowledge like is power, and that it is knowledge production as a form of activism. And so all of you have been involved in extensive research. So I'm interested in like, what was the process for each of you for gathering this research? Like, what barriers did you face? Like, did you just like call someone like in a secret office and like, I need some revolutionary knowledge now, mother effer? You know what I mean? What was it like? Cecilia, let's start with you, because you made eye contact with me first. Did you know I was going to pick you?
No.
Okay.
Our process actually was calling people up. It wasn't at a secret office. It was most of the time the Public Water Works Department office, and it was asking them for...
I think if you say secret office, it would sound cooler, but it's up to you.
Definitely not secret. They were very... Some of them were surprised that we were even asking. Like, they had to go back and check, like, what are your rates for this amount of water? I think it says, but I'm not sure. Mostly because they hadn't really been asked that before. I think people had conversations and have conversations with the representatives that are along the lines of like, why am I paying so much for my water, which is fair, and which I get, but it kind of buries the numbers, if you will. So like, when we did the investigation, we looked at all of the communities that were getting Lake Michigan water, except for 2 that didn't answer us. And we called every single one and asked them how much they were charging for the volumetric amount of water, how much they were adding on in base fees, so things that you can't take away that you're going to get every month. And we also asked them if there were any variances like every other month or every other week, which some municipalities have, because like I said, they can pass whatever they think they need. So it was asking for it. Sometimes we would have to file Freedom of Information Act request, which everybody here is able to file as well. Any private citizen can do it within 10 days. If the information is public, the government should be able to give it to you, usually at no cost, sometimes at a cost if they have to.
Yeah, and Julia Roberts did it in the movie The Pelican Brief.
Did she really?
Yeah, she's like, they didn't want to give her information. She's like, I can file a Freedom of Information Act. And the guy was like, oh, well, then here it is, because he was scared. And then I was like, I want to be Julia Roberts. And I was like, oh, I'm gay.
It's not going to go like that. Yeah, that was the process.
All right. How about you, Jessica?
Had nothing to do with Julia Roberts for me, but yeah, so we had an eye on General Iron and what was going on with all of the subsidies being sent over to Lincoln Yards, and also looking to see like, oh, where's this going to go? What are they going to do with General Iron? So that's how we originally were just like keeping our eye on it, and then Olga called me up and said, can you look into this? So we did.
Is General Iron's a Rose Worldwide company?
I don't know.
I think it's Howard Labkoff.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So what did we do to gather this information? Just a lot of searching around, a lot of using census data, a lot of numbers. No magical powers. Anyone can do it. It was just a lot of time in front of a computer.
we looked up the legalese through Chicago City Council, and then we also were working with the National Resource Defense Council, which is a law firm for environmental rights, basically for their take on what's going on. Yeah, I mean, we did file a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
Have you heard of FOIA? Freedom of Information Act? Did you say it like that?
Freedom of Information Act?
Yes.
Yeah, but most of the information was public, and got a lot of help from journalists that were continuing to cover it. So.
And then Marcela.
Yeah, so we took a few different approaches. The easy stuff was getting like national weather data, sending out surveys to municipal staff. It was harder to get surveys to residents. Some of that we looked at like Facebook to see who was posting about it in groups and things. We focused especially on the south suburbs and on Chatham because those are two really vocal areas for surveys. But then the insurance data was a big problem. So some of it's public, if it's through the federal government, but the private insurance data like Allstate and State Farm, you can't get that. It's totally private. So
I love that you guys used Facebook though, like as a research tool. I mean, because I only use it to post pictures and get likes when my boyfriend's not paying attention to me enough. You know what I mean? So this is like more productive.
Right. No, but the insurance data was a big problem. So we had a board member who had relationships in the insurance industry. It basically took him brokering for us to get private data, but anonymized still, and only at the zip code level, which is kind of a problem because census data and zip code data are not the same geographies. You have to mesh them together. It's not precise, but it's what they gave us. And we are still having trouble getting updated data sets because, again, it's like this personal relationship. It's really hard to get.
I mean, I don't understand, like, when you guys are doing all that, how do you find time to sell the phones? Okay. I mean, so one of the things we're always trying to do here, right, is also give people tools for their own liberation. I mean, it's one of the things why we started collaborating here with Olga and, the Coalition to Ban Petco, is that they're doing work, but it's also rooted in grassroots research and citizen science, and not waiting for some university or planning committee or reporter or nonprofit, no offense, to come down here and do a study. So I'm wondering, like, do you see any opportunities for people, everyday people, or like people in our audience, to do the kind of research you've done, and what methods or resources can they use? Facebook, all of you can stop posting some real stuff on there for once. Shame them. Everybody.
Yeah, I could start. I mean, I think probably most people in the audience know Olga, right?
Yeah.
So, Olga's a good way to get plugged in. That's how I got plugged in too. So, and Voorhees is here as well, just for like tips on where to go to look for things, or if you want someone to like crunch numbers for hours on end because we're nerds, we can do that. But yeah, most information is out there. If you can kind of just get lost in a bit of a wormhole if you just start on the internet trying to read about these companies. But I also just want to underscore the importance of lived experience and qualitative data in this type of work. Because most of the research centers and institutions, and often press as well, they're not going to look at qualitative data as important as quantitative data. And with a lot of this research, I know folks here can speak to it, most of the data can't even be studied quantitatively. Like, is qualitative, it is hospital visits, is how your child is feeling when you wake up in the morning. And that is just as important as quantitative data, and I know there's a lot of efforts to push the city to begin to look at that when they start to try to pre-plan how land use will be used around here.
Yeah.
That was a real crowd pleaser. I'm going to use that. Lived experience.
The other thing I can add to that is just, it also requires, I think, time, which is one of the things that puts a barrier to democracy in a way. Just having the time to show up places or to call people or to be annoying, which is what we were getting paid to do, which is nice. Yeah, like showing up to these like meetings where rates are being discussed or changes are being discussed can sometimes go a long way. I think what really shocked me about the investigation, or part of what shocked me, is just how big a difference even a small group could make in swaying a politician's mind to do something, because it was all very politicized and it was all very kind of don't want to anger, you know, people or my constituents, whatever. So showing up, asking questions, if you ask enough times, like maybe the information is going to be put on a website somewhere, which is going to make it easier for other people down the line to find out about it. So those are like the very kind of easy, whatever, quick hits.
Marcela?
Yeah. All right. So I'm also going to plug Olga because we're working together on this stuff. But
Oh, wow, she's so popular. Talk about Olga on my show. I love it.
but there's a lot of stuff you can do, and it's necessary because this doesn't show up in the maps and it doesn't show up in the city data set. So you could set up an event like this, and you could have people come and map on paper map where flooding is happening. You could survey your neighbors about it. You could even set up an online like Google map and have people put up pins and post photos about where stuff is happening. Those are some of the main ways that you can like start to document it and build like a flooding archive for your neighborhood. So photos, testimonials, especially on camera, records like damage payments, if you had to call out a plumber to deal with your stuff, whatever. Oh, one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, you should call 311 because that adds to the city's data set and tells them where it's happening and makes them more accountable.
Wait, like if I need a phone number?
No, 311.
Oh, that's 411. 311 is like if there's it's the police, but not really.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one gets killed necessarily when you call 311. All right, let's give it up for Marcela, Jessica, and Cecilia. Thank you so much. Before our second and final panel, I want to welcome our first musical performance for the day and our musical guests for today's show. I'm super geeked out to have them here. For those that don't know, I'm also a scholar and have been doing research on radical arts activism in Chicago. One of the things that I found was were these theater groups that occurred on the South Side that no one, that has been so repressed in the archive, and it's so excited to have some of the original members of that group here. They are the Negrete sisters. They've been making radical art in this neighborhood since the 70s when they started Teatro del Barrio with their brother and made political theater about the farm workers movement. In the 80s, they started El Grupo Chispe, performing folk songs about Mexican revolutionaries around the Midwest and Mexico. And that's what they'll be doing today. Give it up for Chispe.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
We're El Grupo Chispa, spark. Remember, a spark causes a forest fire, right? We're going to sing you a song today. We're going to be back at 3 o'clock to sing you another one. This song is called La Tonta de Antes. It talks about a woman in an abusive relationship. But she has had enough and is not going to take it any longer. Y se dice, ya no voy a ser y ya no soy la tonta de antes. Ya no soy la tonta de antes que en la casa me quedaba esperando que volvieras mientras tú te emborrachabas. Si te vas a la cantina, yo me voy por otro lado a gozar de los placeres de los que tú no me has dado. Los hombres creen muy machos, los hombres creen muy machos, pero son desobligados además de ser borrachos. Si tú tienes tu maruca que te endulce el corazón, yo también tengo a Camilo, grandotote bigotón. ¿Qué bigotón está, comadre? Bigotón, bigotón. Lo que yo quiero un león no es más que un ratoncito que viene a comerse el queso y se queda dormidito. Tengo 3 años casada y no más sufren de errores. El gastando puro dólar, yo sufriendo los dolores. Si tú tratas de pegarme porque dices que me quieres, búscate otra movida, porque macho si no eres. Ya no soy la tonta de antes, y ahora sí gozo mi vida. Vete tú por donde quieras y yo busco mi movida. Ya no soy la tonta de antes que en la casa me quedaba esperando que volvieras mientras tú te emborrachabas. ¡Sí, señor! Thank you.
Let's give it up for Grupo Chispa one more time. All right, we're going to keep things moving in our second panel. In the first panel, we learned all about the messed up caca that's going down with water in Chicago. Now we're going to talk about what the caca people are doing about it. So let's bring up for our water panel, for this next one, our water warriors who are riding the resistance tide here in Chicago. She is a senior program associate at the National Resources Defense Council, where she fights for sustainable land use and zoning rules to protect Chicago communities. She's an active member of the Coalition to Ban Pet Coke and the Southeast Environmental Task Force. She is raising her son on the same Southeast Side neighborhood where she grew up. Please welcome Gina Ramirez Ibarra. They are the lead organizer for Southsiders Organizing for Unity and Liberation, or SOUL. Currently, they're working alongside Food and Water Watch to build support for the Water for All ordinance. They're also a candidate for ministry at Chicago Theological Seminary. Please welcome Ab Weeks. Cynthia Rodriguez is the director of organizing at Centro de Trabajadores Unidos. She's a Chicana living on the southwest side, and in her free time, she's the co-host of Las Malandrinas Radio, a podcast about Mexican regional music and politics. Let's bring up Cynthia. And finally, Eva Tomasula y Garcia grew up in Northwest Indiana, where her family has lived, worked, and breathed in toxins for 4 generations. She's previously worked at an environmental justice organization in Mexico City and is now economic justice organizer at Centro de Trabajadores Unidos. Give it up for Eva and Cynthia one more time. All right, Ab. Let's start with you. So what I really want to do is talk about being queer in seminary and the fact that Jesus was obviously gay. That's like, you know, but this might not be the audience for that. Let's stick to the point. Can you break down what is the Water for All ordinance and why did SOUL decide to get involved?
Yes, so it's actually funny because one of the big reasons we got involved was because of Cecilia's article about pay disparities on the South Side and in Black and brown communities in Chicago. So the Water for All ordinance addresses 4 things. The first thing it addresses is affordability. So there's tiered affordability standards based on income level. So you will see a discount in your water bill if you are in a family with an income of 40 grand or less, all the way down to free water. The second thing it does is it prevents the privatization of water in Chicago by requiring a supermajority public vote if the city wants to privatize its water sources. The third thing it does is creates a committee in charge of equitable infrastructure replacement across the city made up of stakeholders from the public health community, teachers, community activists, environmentalists. And then the last thing it does is puts a moratorium on water shutoffs for lack of payment.
I mean, so Carlos Rosa, the alderman, who's also a gay Latino in politics but not as good looking as me, he introduced this ordinance back in 2017 and it went nowhere, right? It got killed and it got killed, right? But now we have this amazing new progressive mayor. No shade. Total shade. Who's going to single-handedly defeat oppression like a black gay Captain America. But Lori Lightfoot and her suddenly progressive aldergoons, what are they going to say yes to this ordinance? No problem, right?
It depends. So the short answer is we are reintroducing, the ordinance will be reintroduced. We're planning for October 16th, so the next city council meeting. You can call your alderman, this will help. But the thing with Lori Lightfoot is, so we asked when...
So progressive.
I'm gonna stick to water stuff with Lori Lightfoot. But, so if we go back to the runoff, when Lightfoot was running against Preckwinkle, us, along with some other groups, did an interview with the candidates, and we asked them, would you increase rates on industrial and corporate water users to provide relief to low-income families? And Lori Lightfoot said, yes, that's a no-brainer. Then, her first day in office, she put a moratorium on water shutoffs. However, her way of putting a moratorium on water shutoffs was calling the head of the water department and saying not to shut off people's water for lack of payment. We don't actually know if this has been implemented. And we don't know, and when we called the water department, they said that they were not given instructions on how it was going to be implemented yet. So that is the only thing she's done for this so far, other than deny many meeting requests to meet on the actual full ordinance itself.
So progressive. So since you started organizing people to put pressure on aldermen, what have you noticed is effective or not effective?
So the biggest thing with the aldermen that are not sponsoring this is that they don't actually believe that these high rates are happening in their communities. So we've given them, and one thing that we know is that as much data as we have showing them that that's the truth, it's not until they hear real stories from their residents that they believe it. And so I would encourage folks that are experiencing this or know people that are experiencing this to contact your elected officials or link up with groups like us and Food and Water Watch who can help you to go meet with them and talk to them about it.
Thank you. All right, so Cynthia and Ava, you have been organizing around the same issue of water costs, but across the border in Calumet City.
Across the border. Yeah.
Right? You like that? Just slipped it in there. How did that fight go down?
Oh, and also shout out to Soul, shout out Tanya, because we did that campaign with them. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Soul. Let's give it up.
Yeah. So Cynthia's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics about the campaign in Calumet City, but I guess just to back up a little bit and talk about context for a little while. So is that better?
Yeah.
All right.
So powerful.
Woo! Okay, well, I'm going to start off powerful then. So water access is an immigrant issue. It's a low-wage worker issue. It's a labor issue. It's a race issue. And so Cynthia's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the campaign in Cal City. But for context, so the previous panel and previous speakers already talked about some of the statewide stuff that we've been seeing going on. So last year, Ronner had an amendment to the state water bill making it easier for private companies to privatize local water systems. 14 Illinois counties now are privatized, including Bolingbrook and Homer Glen, which are also suburbs in the south. 15% of all local water systems in the country are privatized. So we're really seeing not only a corporate takeover, but also a kind of privatized mindset whereby local governments also are acting as corporate entities. And this is something that we saw happening in Cal City. So that's statewide, more locally, here on the southeast side and the suburbs in the south. We've been living with over 200 years of rampant contamination and rampant just corporate takeover. So ever since the genocide of the Potawatomi community that cleared the lands for the first steel mills that opened up in the 1800s, through the present with the people already talked about the pet coke dumps, the manganese dumps. I mean, this is a classic story. We know that 3 out of every 4 toxic waste dumps are located in low-income communities of color, and it's no different here. So we are seeing immense contamination. Also, a lot of the land that we have our homes on, that we live by, is actually built out of slag, which is an industrial byproduct from steel production. It's highly reactive, leaking into Lake Michigan and the Calumet River. So that's what we're dealing with. And environmentalists often talk about slow violence as the violence that happens because of these contaminants, that it's harder to see. If you're slowly getting asthma, cancers over the course of many years, that's harder to organize around too, and it really changes the tactics that we have to have. And I guess we would say that water access is part of that slow violence. low minimum wages in the south suburbs are part of that violence. So what happens, like we'll see in Cal City, when there's a sudden increase in the price of your water, but you have a low-wage job that you've been forced into, and like you're trying to pay your bills and get health care and everything at the same time. So I guess the fight for workers' rights, for a better environment, it's all the same thing. Like we're all fighting back against these corporations that are not only destroying the earth, but making us work in those very jobs that are making us sick.
So in 2015, taking it back. So in 2015, we were doing some work around building new worker co-ops, and we were doing some trainings with our folks out there, specifically in like Cal City, but throughout the south suburbs. Ava's now leading that work, but at that time, we were working with some señoras who were ready to do some sewing co-op work.
That's right, because you guys are labor organizing.
Yes.
Like,
so we're founded as a worker center, one of 8 worker centers in the area, and very much founded by the closure and the moving of Jay's Potato Chips to Indiana, and the workers that themselves created CTU. And so workers from CTU were also like, well, it's not enough to just fight back against abusive bosses. It's necessary, but it's tiring. We also need to create new alternative economies for ourselves. And so we were in the south suburbs doing some trainings around workers' co-ops, when a lot of the señoras were like, man, our water bills are like through the roof, and all of a sudden we have these $35 late fees, and we don't know what to do because this hadn't happened before. Usually, if folks didn't get in their water bill payment on time in Cal City, they'd have 2 weeks to make that payment, and there'd be no late fee within those 2 weeks. And so what ended up happening was that water bills were increasing really fast. There was these late fees. You had to pay $5 if you didn't bring like your physical water bill to go pay it in person. So it was a hot mess, or a wet mess.
right,
And so
get it.
what ended up happening is that we realized this was an issue to organize around. One, because we're not just a worker center, right? We're like a geographically specific worker center, but also because the señora said we had to do it, so we had to do it. And so at that time, there was a compa, Christian, who was the organizer, and so we're here just, sharing his story and what went down. And community came together and really started to put pressure on Cal City. So I don't know how familiar y'all are with Cal City, not far from here, 15, 20 minutes south of us. What Cal City and many of the south suburbs have going on for them is a lot of fame for corruption and corruption scandals, and a lot of just beef between the politicians around their positions. And so it was a moment where elections were right on the horizon también. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how this basically water novela played out, because that's basically what happened. Like for us, right, for folks, this is an issue of life or death, right? Like, how can folks pay their water while they got to pay the rent? All this is happening, but at the same time, for the elected officials and for the ones who stood with community members, it was not about that, right? It was very much about these elections coming up and keeping their roles. And so at this time, there's State Rep Thaddeus Jones, who is, I don't know if y'all knew this was possible, but he was both alderman of Cal City and a state rep at the same time. And so, he wanted to make sure that folks had their water access, but he also wanted to see what's going to happen here with my roles, right? So you have a Mayor Michelle, who's been in office for forever. And you have all the politicians beefing with each other. And so how this played out is that, one, as a community org, as a worker center, community came together and put a lot of pressure on Calumet City that looked like going to city council meetings, that looked like petitions, that looked like door knocking, that looked like interrupting city council meetings, that looked like meetings with representatives. But then at the same time, that looked like an impending referendum around term limits. And so this played out with they have this ordinance referendum situation passed where basically you couldn't occupy 2 seats at the same time. So one of the folks working on, Joan's working on this to put some support on the community, right, to give some support to the community. How that played out is that he couldn't run for alderman again, and he was also trying to run for mayor, so he's now still a state rep. So he doesn't have all 3 roles, but that's what ended up happening. And so we also did a lawsuit with some of our more activist lawyer friends, and what the results of that is that community members won back $175,000. So that's good. Not everybody, and I'll just, to wrap up, it was like this whole thing, but there was a lot of retaliation, and that's one of the things that I think I want to highlight, that is something that we deal with a lot in our labor organizing. What does retaliation against workers look like? But in this case, like, you got inspectors going to community members' homes and like telling them that their grass isn't cut enough, and that like something's wrong with the building, and then they have this like $250 fine that of this random obscure law in the city that like other people aren't being targeted for. So retaliation is very real, and that's one of the ways in which it played out in Cal City. But folks won their water. The water fight continues. I mean, just 5 days ago there was a whole thing around E. coli in Cal City water. So yeah, we could talk more about it, but that's basically in a nutshell.
That's a big nutshell.
Big wet nutshell.
Hey. Get it moist. Okay, Gina. You're a badass organizer and mom organizing with a group of badass organizers and moms on the southeast side. I've been following your guys' work. We came out here and had a show last year. You've won major victories in your work, especially around the coalition to ban Petco. You can't look at my question ahead of time. I saw you. And you've been forcing them to test the air quality in your hood and actually communicate to you all about what you're breathing in every day. You were on our show last year to talk about this also. So can you catch us up? What's been going, what was the original inciting incident, and then what's been going on in the hood since then?
Yeah, so the name of our group is Coalition of Ban Pet Coke, which is pretty self-explanatory. A group of badass women fought the Koch brothers and won. But this is an environmental justice community, so that's just not our only battle. Over the past year, we've been dealing with a neurotoxin called manganese that's being emitted in our air, and its high levels have been found in our soil. The Illinois EPA did testing, found really high levels, and people are still living with this neurotoxin in their soil. It has not been excavated. So we've been on the city and the Illinois EPA to remedy this situation. There's also been lead found in the soil in high concentrations, but we have had one small victory. One of the handlers of manganese, Watco, did close. They stopped handling manganese, but the coalition really wants a ban on this. But really our work is more about land use and zoning reforms in the city of Chicago. The cumulative burden of pollution is concentrated in the south and west side. So we're really proud to be part of the Chicago Environmental Justice Network, which is a bunch of grassroots organizations from Little Village, McKinley Park, Pullman, and the east side, mostly women of color. And it's just really strength in numbers, like if Little Village has a logistics facility coming in and they want to testify, we will roll up, because that's what you do. We need to have each other's back. And just like Jessica was saying earlier, don't underestimate the power of storytelling. I was on a panel recently in Washington, D.C. with BP, Walmart, and the American Gas Association, and here I was, an East Side mom. And all of the facts and science that they were spewing out, like how they're going to solve climate change, it didn't measure up to the stories I could talk about, with the levels of cancer in my family, my son having autism, the dirty, foul smells I wake up to, the taste of metallic that I taste when I cross the bridges here on the southeast side of Chicago. So please amplify your voices here if you live in an environmental justice community, because they matter.
Gina, there's also been some big news this week. Can you tell us about the Inspector General's report that just came out about pollution in Chicago? And while you're at it, can you tell us what an Inspector General is?
I can't. But doing this work, there's always fancy reports that come out that people who are on the ground actually already know that data just from doing this work. So inspections, the city has the Department of Planning and Development and the Chicago Department of Public Health. So the Department of Environment was disbanded when Rahm Emanuel came into office, and the Chicago Department of Public Health took over. And if you call 311 because you've seen dust emissions or smell something, someone from the Chicago Department of Public Health will come out and inspect it. So inspections have been down in this report 40%, and the Chicago Department of Public Health is understaffed. These are things we know. The Coalition of Ban Pet Coke has monthly meetings with the Chicago Department of Public Health, and the only inspector's name I've ever heard is this guy Hoodoise. And I'm like, do you guys have anyone else that works for you? So when the report came out, I was totally not surprised, but it's just really important to emphasize these are things that the environmental justice community knows, and we don't need these fancy reports to tell us these things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking right now, right, like, 'cause, so much of the fantasy of activism, right? It's really bizarre the way activism works right now, and it's played out the landscape of it, because it is like universities and NGOs, right, and nonprofits and things like that. And I don't want to dismiss that work. I think it does a lot. And then there's also these grassroots movements that erupt that that you all are really a part of, right? And that's what we always say. We're like, oh, if it's not accessible to the poor, if it's not, it's not really a revolution, right? But so often we don't see that being the work that necessarily crystallizes, right? And so I'm thinking, like, what is the moment that each of you have had where you were like, oh, like, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what it is, And what would you credit getting there to?
I guess I could just share a moment. I did not want to be an environmentalist. I was just sort of like dragged into this because I became a mom and started to really care about living and raising him in this neighborhood that I grew up in, and it looks the same from when I was growing up. There's piles along the Calumet River. It still smells really terrible. But I was testifying in Little Village against this logistics facility, and we had like a just small victory that they were like, the city council was going to like hold their decision on granting the permit for this facility, and Kim Wasserman, who's the executive director of Alvejo, held my hand. And it was just, I work at a big NGO, and I don't have anyone holding my hand when I'm at work because they just don't get it. So I think, again, just, really sticking together with the grassroots movement is just essential because, our lived experience is really important.
Hard question. I'm trying to think of one that relates to the water work that we do. But I think for the most part, some of our work is faith-based, and which we'll get to gauge this at some point. But we believe that your faith can be in anything. It doesn't have to be religion. Your faith can be in people or humanity or justice. But when we do our faith-based work, it's just interesting to hear about how a lot of the different religious historic texts talk about water and the importance of it to community and faith and religion, and how there are like people of faith that are elected officials that are definitely not standing by that. But hearing about that is what brings it home.
Cynthia and Ava?
So just to start, so I think one thing that we really learned with the fight in Cal City was how it opened up to more campaigns, and that was like a big moment, because the water fight then led to a referendum to eliminate the tip sub-minimum wage in Cal City. That was like 82% of folks who voted in Cal City said they wanted to eliminate it and pass a $15 minimum wage. And then it led to the first South Suburb adopting a welcoming city ordinance. So that was really cool. But I think also, like, it also showed, like, damn, like, we have a lot of work to do, but also, like, this is the work, right? This is, like, not the easy work, but this is the hard work. We haven't continued to do a lot of work around water issues in the last, like, year and a half. But that's because when we were checking back in with folks, one thing that a lot of our Latinx folks would talk about is, like, the next issue that we got to work on is the violence in the South Suburbs, the violence in Cal City. And so that's when we were like, okay, pause. We have a lot of work to do, right? With our community, with our gente, to talk about, like, we just did this whole campaign that really brought together the predominantly Black community in Cal City with the Latino community, but now like people want to take on violence but that just means we have a lot of work to do to really work on like what's that roots analysis of what folks just are quick to identify, our folks are quick to identify as like the violence issue that we need to address in the South Suburbs. So just to be real, right, like that, I think that's the work and that's what we have to do next.
Yeah, no, I think like you talked about moments, like when was that moment? I think you have like 1 million of those moments every day and then 1 million of the opposite. So it's like we're all in these fights for the long haul. We know it's going to take a long time. And like finding the moments that sustain us to keep doing it, to keep identifying where we need to be putting more of our work into, that's what it's all about.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up for Ava, Cynthia, Ab, and Gina. We got to our Got You last commentary for this beautiful afternoon show before we get to our final musical performance from the Negrete Sisters, Grupo Chispa. So yesterday, Chicago youth participated in a general strike. They walked out of class and joined young people around the world to protest global leaders in action on climate change. This was a movement by and for youth started by a 16-year-old activist named Greta Thunberg. Youth organizers asked adults to join them, and millions of people around the world showed up. Our guest, Gina Ramirez Ibarra, was downtown with her son, as were many other Southeast Siders. Earlier in the day, the labor groups that were protesting outside Amazon Chicago office left the protest and went and marched to Grant Park to join this youth strike. This is how solidarity works. Somebody asks you to show up, and you show the fuck up. So when Olga came to us and said, I want you to show up for my hood, I didn't ask any questions. I got on a plane back from LA. We got our team together on short notice and we made this show happen. I don't just love Olga personally, I love and admire the work that her and so many other people are doing here on the Southeast side to address the environmental injustice. Hoodoise member Laura Ramirez pointed out at our last show here on the Southeast side that solidarity is also about showing up for yourself. I drink this water. We all drink the same water, and we're in this together whether we want to be or not. When we show up for others, we show up for ourselves. And when we fight injustice anywhere, we also are fighting for it everywhere. That is the metaphysics of social change. And that's good because the issue of water is not just one affecting the black and brown and working class bodies of the Southeast sides. It is one that threatens the black, brown, and exploited peoples all across the planet. Right now, as we hurtle towards 2020, 2/3 of the world is already living in water-stressed regions, and half the hospital beds in the world are filled with people there for water-related illnesses. And as the globe gets hotter and hotter, water is becoming a hotter commodity. Privatized and bottled water companies make up one of the fastest-growing industries on the planet, and there are lots of people banking on the fact that safe, fresh water is going to become harder to find so they can charge us a fortune for it. Because that is how capitalist actors work. They aren't looking to resolve climate crisis, environmental disaster, or the destruction of natural resources. Instead, they will accelerate it, exacerbate it, and profit the fuck out of it. They will kill us and the planet with their tunnel vision, and they don't care. Because the same people that are creating climate crisis will insulate themselves from the effects of it. For example, in 2014, The Guardian broke the story about Echo Atlantic. It's a man-made island off the coast of Nigeria that can self-sustain for at least 2 centuries and where some of the richest people in the world have already brought real estate, hinting at a future of climate apartheid. They don't care about us, so we have to care about each other. In the US, there is a premium placed on fantasies of individuality, choice, and independence. I don't believe humans were ever really intended for that. And even if we were, that's not what's going to save us now. Now more than ever, we need to now push the dreams of collectivity, commitment, and interdependence. So often you hear the phrase, nobody owes anyone anything. I fucking disagree, and I try my hardest to live by the idea that we owe each other everything.
Yes, yes, yes.
We have to show up for each other. We have to have a will for solidarity. There's often going to be conflict that demands we work across differences and disagreement. We have to set aside our desires to be there for others. Solidarity is not easy. It's work, but it's necessary work, because if we don't fight for each other and ourselves, who the fuck will?
That's right.
Thank you so much for coming to the Hoodoise tonight. Thank you so much to all the organizations that were present and the years of hard work and hard research that they bring to this table to share with an audience. I want to welcome up for our closing performance the Negrete sisters, Grupo Chispa.
Okay, the last song we're going to do is, check, can you hear me? Here we go.
Hello.
It's La Chicana. And we're going to start with an old grito that we had way back in the day. Everybody remembers. Power to the people, right? Power! This song is called La Chicana. And it's dedicated to all women, all those trailblazers from the past, the present, and all those in the future. La Chicana. En la frente de liberación, este pueblo llamado chicano, existen mujeres listas y valientes, existen mujeres que saben luchar. Son las Adelitas, chicanas bonitas, son las Adelitas de revolución. En ciudades y campos se forman, dando fuerza y valor a su pueblo. Revolucionarias luchando por justicia, revolucionarias dando inspiración. Son las Adelitas, chicanas bonitas, son las Adelitas de revolución. Son las madres de la raza nueva, son las novias del gran movimiento. Son mujeres chicanas luchando por justicia, mujeres chicanas dando inspiración. Son las Adelitas, chicanas bonitas, son las Adelitas de revolución. Su cultura y origen respetan, su color y valor son de bronce. Mujeres chicanas luchando por justicia, mujeres chicanas dando inspiración. Son las Adelitas, chicanas bonitas, son las Adelitas de revolución. Son las Adelitas, chicanas bonitas, son las Adelitas de revolución. Let's have a big clap for Ricardo.
Yeah!
Hey, good looking guy. Thank you so much. This is a clap that we used to do in the 60s for all the revolutionaries, all the Chicanas, everybody in struggle. And it starts like this. It starts slow and then it builds up and builds up. This is the Chicano clap.
Just a couple of announcements. We are done this afternoon. Thank you for coming out to the first ever daytime outdoor Hoodoise. I managed to not finish sober, so I'm happy about that. Just chug the beer right now. If you want to stick around and chug a beer or maybe two, Marco's going to be playing for the next for the next 45 minutes. If you came on the bus, you don't have to rush onto it. The bus that we rented going back to Pilsen, it leaves at 4 o'clock. And feel free to hang out, check out the art, see all the murals. Let's give it up for our host, 93 Studios. Let's give it up for Olga Bautista.
Yeah!
And the Alliance for the Great Lakes and for the Ink Factory.
Yes!
Keep an eye out. The Hoodoise is returning in January 2020 with a whole 20... That's my ESL teacher right there. He's like, 2020... The Hoodoise is returning in January 2020 with a whole year of programming. So come and check it out and be on the lookout. Thanks so much for coming out this afternoon.
Okay, guys, that's the end of that segment. Thanks for tuning in. I'm about to just walk through, so if you want to click out, but they're still doing the 93 Studio. It's going on with a vending. They actually doing viaduct painting, which I'm going to make my way to that in a minute so you can see how they're cleaning the viaducts out. Hey, here you go, here you go. They up in there. I know it's kind of hard to tent. Hey, ladies, how y'all doing? And what they selling here, they got some tamales going on right here. Yes. Hey, boo, where you come from? Oh, this is Joanne I'm talking to. Let's say, hey, Joanne. Hey, how long you been here? A couple hours, I think. Oh, you ain't watching the whole thing then? Oh, I covered the whole. Yeah, I'm about to hit the light out now myself. Okay, good. What's up, shit? I mean, you can sit in that tent.
Superman but dead, you know.
Yeah, that's the difference. I'm looking at a lot of art, but yours got the story. You know, besides being a talented artist.
Yeah, sit down behind me. Yeah, I would sit down and then I would stand up and eat.
Oh, it's a 2A. This is a 2B.
Hi. Go the other way around. I know this breeze, it feels good. Oh, watch that, they're going to try to
Okay, and how about on Buffalo?
No, not in Buffalo, not Did you see this plate? It's gonna look really good. It's actually really good.
like for animals.
Well, because I thought so because you had the dog, and I was like,
Oh wow, that's cute.
hey, everybody. Hey, how you doing?
Got it?
No, I got it. Okay, I'm gonna make my way over here to the lighter.
Esta que espera para moverla, no ve que el ritmo es general. Mover la colita está de moda, mover la colita.
Now this the tent. I took pictures of the tent, but you have not seen this tent in live action here. This is gorgeous, right? The tent has a wood thing. Can you see it? Okay, here we go. I'm kind of stooping down so you can get an idea what the tent look like. Now, I don't know if any of y'all remember how this body I looked at before. Not this good, I can tell you that. Wow, a lot of artists. Because you know, I already know, guys, this paint about to get me sick, so I'll be getting out of this in a minute.
So like it wasn't like it wouldn't be right, man. Like
crossing over because it's another side. This is how I look from this side, so you can see on here. Hey, how are you? Excuse me.